Rabbi, welcome back. We are holding at Yerushalmi Masrot. Okay. Now, you do know that the Torah of Eretz Yisrael and the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, you have to separate Trumas and Maasros. First of all, there's Truma Gedola, given to the Cohen. After that, a tenth of what's left is Maser Rishon, which is given to the Levi. After Maser Rishon, you separate a tenth of what's left, either Maser Sheni or Maser Ani, depending on what year it is. Of course, the Levi has to give his own Trumas Maser from his Maser. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So the Isser Tevel is learned from the Pasuk of Le'echalo is Kadshei B'nai Yisrael. According to most Rishonim, it's Dagan, Tirash, V'yitzhar, which is grain, wine, and oil, which are in the Torah, and everything else is rabbinical, right? There are discussions. There are some Rishonim who hold that all fruits of the tree, and even pulses as well, and seeds are chayav trumas and maasros min Torah, but only vegetables is only drabanan. And that's the view of Reb Nissim Gaon as well. Okay? You need various conditions to be chayav trumas and maasros. You've got to have, it's got to be a food, it's got to be nishma that's guarded, as opposed to a hefka area, and it's got to grow from the land, right? It's fruit that grows from the land, as opposed to your mushrooms and so on that get growth from the air and so on. Hydroponics is a question. Yeah. Min Torah, there's no Isser Tevel on fruit until it's gone through a process of Gemar Malacha. It's finished in the field, it's been brought into the house. Right? With Rabbanan, you can't even eat Achilas Keva. You can't eat even fruit that's not gone through this completion process. But you can have it on a temporary eating stage. Okay. Now, Gemar Malacha, it depends on the various fruits, have various stages, what's considered Gemar Malacha. Right? Different fruit have different levels. And it depends on, some of the fruit might have reached that stage in the fields, it doesn't mean the others have reached that stage. And the kvias, the chalos of tevel on the fruits is always called kvias l'maseh. That's when it's forbidden, even achilas arai. Okay. What else have we got? So Shabbos is one of these things that's kovea l'maseh. We'll see what that is in due course. Chatzah, which is guarded, is also kvias l'maseh, and we spoke about achilas arai, achilas keva. There are things which are potter from maasros, right? Hefka produce, hekdesh produce, peres of a guy, lakuach. So that's with some way it's being bought. One who sells his fruit to others is potter, the seller and the buyer from trumas and maasros. We'll come on to that. The Minat Torah din. The Minat Torah din was when you eat your fruit from your field, right? But if you sell it to others, you are potter and the buyer is potter, Minat Torah. Okay? The Rishonim discussed that. Everyone agrees the Torah is only Minat Torah and Rabbanan, there's still a rabbinical obligation. Nowadays, it's Machlekes Tanaim Amoraim, whether the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is Chal, as far as the mitzvahs dependent on the land nowadays. Some say the Kedusha was there, Shusha Benun is still there. We'll come on to that in due course. So that's your brief introduction to Maasros. Okay, are we ready? Mm-hmm. So the chiyuv to separate the 5 matanas from the produce of Eretz Yisrael, you've got Truma Gedola, as we said, is given to the Kohen. And from that, and then of course Truma Gedola, you might be generous, you'll give 1 in 40, 1 in 50, or 1 in 60. Okay? Maser Rishon is a tenth of what's left, that's given to the Levi. From that, the Levi has to separate a tenth of what he gets as Trumas Maser. Maser Sheni is the produce remained after Truma Gedola and Maser Rishon. You separate the year 1, 2, 4, and 5, and you take it to Yerushalmi to eat there to redeem with money, and to take the money to Yerushalmi. Maser Ani is year 3 and year 6 instead of Maser Sheni, that's given to the poor. Okay? And if produce needs one of these things being taken and you haven't taken it, then it's called Tevel, and you can't eat it. Now, Klal Amru b'Maasros. So they said a general rule b'Maasros. Kol Shul Eichel, if it's a food that people eat, then Nishma, and it has an owner who guards it. V'gidula b'na'aretz, and he grows on the ground. Chayav b'Maasros, there is a Maaseh obligation. They also said it was fitting to eat when it was first growing, or at the end, right? At the end of the process, like some vegetables and so on. We'll see according to those views of vegetables. Even though you leave it in the ground, for it to grow a bit more, you are chayav maasros whenever you cut it. Katan v'gadol, whether you cut it when it's small or you cut it after it grew bigger. Anything which is not fitting, it's not really fitting to be eaten when it first grows. But later on it will be fitting to eat. Then there's no ma'aser obligation until it reaches that stage that it is fitting to eat. Okay. Klal Amru. If you want, Avi, you want one of these texts? No? Klal Amru. They said in Maasros. So we say, like this, anything which is a food and is guarded and grows from the ground is chayav maasros. Now we bring a brisa now, which looks at the source from a pasuk for this klal. Okay, so let's see. Actually, there's some problems with the brisa. There's someone changed the wording. Let's see. Ksiv, it says, Aser to Aser, let's call Tzavua Zarecha. You shall surely take Maser on all your produce, which comes out in the year every year. Had the Torah said just Aser to Aser, Yisrael Maser Kolet Rabbi Yochanan Maser. Everything has Maser obligations. Talmud Lama says no, it's called Tzavua Zarecha. The produce of your seeds is liable, not everything. Maybe only grain and not pulses, not fruits. That which comes out of the field, shana shana. So riba, so we're including other things that grow from the field, right? They are also obligated. Okay. Now, the riba. If that's the case that we're including shazir and igina, why do we not include then other garden seeds which are not eaten? They also grow from the field. So he says ksiv, it says tavua zarecha, right, which implies grain. Or ksiv, it says which comes out from the fields every year, which implies anything that grows from the field. Okay, so how do you understand both of them? So you take from between davar or echel v'nishma, something which is food that humans eat and is guarded, it grows from the ground. These are the things which are chayav b'maaseh. Okay? Now, is Tavai Mishma'ina min Hana. Some wanted to learn this klal from the following. We learned in the Bryce, this is Aser to Aser klal. That's a general rule, implying everything is obligated in Maaseh. As called Tavai Zaracha, Prat, that's a specific, maybe only grain. Then it says, and klalu prats, when you have general followed by specific, it means just the specific. So eli ela tavua. So that's all very well with grain. But kidneys benign, how do you know various pulses might also be obligated? So that's why it says v'chol masa haaretz, and all the mass of the land to include kidneys. And the pasuk goes on, v'zera haaretz, right? From the seeds of the land, the rabbi zera shum shechlaim v'gar ger. So it's coming to include seeds of garlic, shechalaim. Then they sometimes translate it as cress of some kind. The garga, they don't say what garga. Huh? Rockets. Okay. So some sort of rocket. There we are. So these sort of grasses as well should be included. Mizera haaretz. That's the gifts of Tosus in Rosh Hashanah. And it's now zera shum, this garlic seed, is considered what we eat. So it should be chayav ma'aser anyway. Otherwise, it shouldn't be chayav ma'aser. So it must be something that people eat. Okay. Some say it's mashma from the Rambam that zera shum is not eaten, but some learn the Rambam slightly differently. Okay. Now maybe shani marba zera loifa elyon. Now maybe I should include the seed of, now loif is like some of the onion family. I don't know if they have a name for it.
Arum.
Arum?
Yeah.
Arum. A-R-U-M.
Yeah.
So there we are. Maybe it's that. So zera loifa elyon, this sort of wildish arum, and maybe they're eaten, but maybe their seeds are not eaten. Their seeds are potter. So maybe I should include the seeds of this thing. But zera kareshin, which again, the sort of leeks and the hops family, V'zera b'tzalim, the seed of onion, zera lepes, the turnip seeds, v'shazera negina she'ena chalin, other garden seeds which are not eaten. Talmud Lomas, right, says mizera ha'aretz. The mizera ha'aretz is going to be part of the zera ha'aretz, not all of it. But like kol zera ha'aretz, not all seeds. There are seeds which are not eaten. Now then the Brisa continues. Pri ha'etz, the rabbis kol peres ha'elan, all the fruit of the tree. Yachashani ma'be charuvei shita v'tzalmayna. Maybe I'm going to include these carobs and charuvei geroira. These are the various types of carobs from these places. Now, they're not really fitting to eat. Talmud Lomas says mipri or eitz. Mipri means some of it, but not all of it. Like ha'perasila, not every fruit of the tree. So not these carobs, which are not really fitting to eat. Now, yerakos minayin. And what about vegetables? They're also chayv maasros. Esti ben Yehuda, Iva hamasros liyerakos. The maasros for vegetables, midivrein, is rabbanon, and it has no source in the pasuk. So this brisa, however, does include various other things, right? Priya eitz, various other fruits. So this is not like where we've said, the other Mepharshim say, Degancha tiroshcha v'itzarecha, which is wine and oil, and perhaps grapes and olives, right? But not other fruit. It's not, according to the other drashas, other fruits are not included in the Torah din of Maasros. This brisa, however, does seem to include other things. Other fruits is included in the Maasros obligation. Okay? We bring here, most Rishonim hold, the Chiyuv Torah is Dagon, Tirash, V'yitza, which is grain, olives, and oil, and grapes and wine. And these droshes we're bringing here is asmachtas, right? It's not really. The Ramban writes, even grapes and olives are not Chiyuv Torah until you make wine or oil. They're called Tirash, V'yitza. The Ramban says the Chiyuv of the Torah Tirash V'yitza includes olives and grapes because they're there to make wine and oil from them. All right. Rashi learns that Tirash V'yitza includes wine and oil only, but grapes and olives are still Chayv Maasros in Torah because they're included in Tavua. Okay, let's carry on. So where are we? Yerakos minayin is ben Yehuda Maasrot Yerakos midivrein. Okay, fine. We learned in our Mishnah v'nishma, something which is guarded as a Chiyuv Maasros, as opposed to hefker. Rav Chisda Amar hivke. If a person made hefker kama his stack, and then he acquired it, so it's still connected to the ground. Then he separated truma after the gemar malacha, and he made a kri. So he's gone through this gemar malacha process, and he separated truma. I raised the truma; it is truma. But hivke shibalin, if he made it hefker when it had been cut, and then he reacquired it. And then he separates truma. Ain't a truma; it's hefker. It's not truma. Ma ben kama shibalin. What's the difference if he has made hefker kama? It doesn't take away the Maasros obligation. If you make it hefker when it's been cut for one period of time, it removes the Maasros obligation. The Gemara says kama actually kira when it's still connected to the ground before you made it hefker. Of hivrish truma. If you take truma in such a stage while it's still growing, ain't no truma. It doesn't help, right? If you went and separate truma, it doesn't work. So the hefker that you made a hefker didn't really remove any chiyuv that there was there, and therefore it doesn't stop the chiyuv from being chal when later on when you end up cutting it. Whereas shibalin, when it's been cut, actually if kiran, but even before you made it hefker, avav hivish meni truma, I raised the truma. If you made it truma then, all right, when it's been cut, it would be truma before you made it hefker, but it would be truma if it's been cut, right? Therefore, the hefker for one period of time removes the zika for any hefker which is already chal. And once it's removed, any chiyuv which has already had, the chiyuv doesn't come back later on at all. Hekdesh, the din should be the same as hefker. If you make something hekdesh, right, while it's still growing on the ground, and you redeem it while it's still growing on the ground, you're chayv maasrot when you end up cutting it. If you made it hekdesh when it was cut, and then you redeemed it, then it's potter from maasrot. However, the following Chachamim argue on what Rav Chinna said in the name of Rav Chisda, right? The Chachamim we're going to see now, they hold hefker for a period of time when it's betalish is potter, but not hekdesh, and not like Rav Chinna Shem Rav Chisda who said they're the same. Rav Yochanan Shem Rav Yanai, he says there's a Levi, the Levi will come to take his ma'aseh, he has no share with you, but what you are ownership of, and he hasn't got. You have to give him. That's when you give him Maisa from stuff that you have and he hasn't got. Yatzaleket, as opposed to the ability to cut gleanings in the field, you've got an equal opportunity as he has. You don't have to give Maaseh to Levi from that. He could get that himself. He leket, he shikha, he peah, he hefka. And they have all the same din. So just like leket is excluded from any Maaseh obligation, so also shikha, peah, hefka is all excluded from any Maaseh obligation because the Levi has the same ability to go and get it. Okay? Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan, the Bnei Yeshiva would ask on Rav Yanai, you're not the same as him, as the Levi, because his Mukdash L'Gavoya, Levi's got no right in it, and yet we still say, it's like you and him are the same, right? It's got the din, Yadcha V'Yada Shavin is positive from Maaseh, right? So you see that the source of Tur Hefka is not from a Ba'a Levi, like Rav Yanai said, because then the Hekdesh wouldn't have needed to be Potter, because the truth is you don't have the same hand. Basically, there must be some other source to Pater Hefka, which applies to Hekdesh as well. So Amar Vila Manan Kiyomit, he said, what are we talking about here? Where they wanted to say that according to Rosh Rav Yanai, there should be a difference between Hefka and Hekdesh. Look, if he's gone through that process that is now complete, Yeshus Hefka, Yeshus Hekdesh, and it was like smoothing out the pile, and we're after the threshing, and that's already been done. If they're both potul, he says, well, Amar Torah, the Torah says, Reishis the Gancha is your grain, right? Your miruach, your stacking up of the pile is in your domain, V'lo shel Hefka, and not when it's done with Hefka. It's not when it's Rishus Hefka, it's potul. And also Reishis the Gancha is going to be your grain, V'lo shel Hekdesh, and not as opposed to Hekdesh. So Meruach, if the stacking and the smoothing was done while it belonged to Hekdesh, you're potul. So we'd never bring the Drosh of our Levi on such a thing. And what are we talking about? So you made Hefka of these stalks, and then you acquired it before they've been smoothed out. So since there was no Meruach when it was Hefka, we don't exempt him from the word Degancha, and therefore Rabbi Yanai said he's potul because of Rabbi Halevi. And then you don't have to ask the Bnei Yeshiva's question, we didn't need to be Hekdesh to be potul. Because here it's Behefka potul and Behekdesh chayev. In this situation, if it was Hefka, it's potul, but as far as Hekdesh is concerned, it would be a chiyuv ma'aser in such a case. Behefka potul, we're explaining now. Behefka potul, if it was a Hefka stage, right, so what's the case? You made a Hefka, and then you acquired it again. Okay? Before it's gone through that process of miruach. So this, now let's see. So Hefka, potul, if it goes through a stage of Hefka, it's potul. Why? Levi will come. He's got no share with you. That which you have ownership, and he hasn't got, you have to give him Masa. Yatsa Hefka, as opposed to Hefka, which everyone's got equal rights. Everyone's got the same rights. But Hekdesh, Chayev. And with Hekdesh, you would be Chayev min Adah, from the Holy Mishnah. Hekdesh Kama, Poda Kama, you made it holy, and then you redeemed it, and it's still connected to the ground. Chayev, the Chayev in such a case, Chayev B'Peah. And it says then, talks about someone who makes his fruits Hekdesh, and then you go and redeem them. If you redeem them before the Gemar, and then the Gizbar finishes them off, and then you redeem them, you're potul. So the obligation at the time of Gemar Malacha, then there's a chiyuv ma'aser on the fruits, whatever. What do you see over here? That if something was Hekdesh, and then it was redeemed after it came to an honest ma'aser stage, even at the time when it was Hekdesh, it was detached, you're chayev. The Torah is only if it was Hekdesh at the time of Gemar Malacha, it was completed through the Gizbar, then it's not Digon Cha, right? It's Digon Hekdesh. But if you made it Hekdesh for one period of time when it was detached, before the Gemar Malacha, that does not pater, because Hekdesh, you don't have the same rights, as opposed to Hefka, where you have the same rights as the other person. And even Shas, Lo B'Shas Gemar Malacha, you have the same rights. So basically, a different dinim between Hefka and Hekdesh. Okay? There's no steer from the din of Hekdesh to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yanai, it fits in. And we see from here According to Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yanai, the Ptur Hefka is because of a Bar Levi, and it's different from Hefka. Hefka is different from Hegdish. Hefka, even for 1 hour, Talosh, Pater from Maaseh. Hegdish, 1 hour, Talosh, doesn't Pater. And that's what we're saying actually earlier on. The Chachamim argued of Chisda, who said that Hegdish, Shor Achas B'Talosh, would also Pater like Hefka. Now, we understood that Hegdish is not considered you and his hand have the same rights, as opposed to Hefka. Ma bein Hefka, ma bein Hegdish. What difference is there between when something's Hefka or Hegdish? I mean, just like Hefka, everyone has equal rights, because everyone can acquire it equally. No one has ownership on it. Hegdish, everyone's equal. No one's allowed to acquire it, and no one has an ownership on it. Hefka, so the Gemara answers, Hefka, Yatsa Yidei HaKol. Hefka has no owners, so everyone's equal in it. But Hegdish, Lo Yatsa Yidei Gizba, there's still a treasurer there, who's in charge, and he's considered like the owner. So therefore the Levi and the owner are not equal in this. Oh, Rav said, I feel like Hegdish, even from the owners, it hasn't left him. But we tell the owner, you should be the first person to redeem it. Yeah? But they aren't Rishon. You redeem it first. Right? And we force him to do that. If he doesn't want to, then we let other people redeem it. So we always go to the owner first. Okay? Rav Zeira, Rav Yasser, Rav Elazar, Hazareah, stay Hefka, Chayb Maestros. If you sow a field, a Hefka field, you do have to separate Maestros. Rav Yonah Mapik Lishna, he took out the Lashon that something that grows in a Hefka field, Chayb Maestros, B'shezacha, when someone acquired it afterwards, right? B'stei Hefka v'giduleha, right? He acquired this Hefka field and what came from it. But if he didn't acquire it, then he's not Chai b'Maisa. Because Hefka is Pater from Maaseh. And that's what Rav Elazar meant. The one who sows a field of Hefka is Chayav if he went and acquired it. V'gidula bin haaretz. We said in the Mishnah, when is there Chai b'Maisa? When it grows from the ground. This is one of the conditions. Rechia barada ba'ikum Rav Yochanan kamein or pitrias. Now these mushrooms, ma'ashei chayavim b'maisrus. Do they have a ma'aser obligation? Amalei Rav Yochanan, Rav Yochanan, Rav Sisai. See if it says Asa, let's go to Vazarecha. The Chiv Maisus Davashun Nizra Mazmech, something that sown and grows. Yasa Kamera Pitrais, these mushrooms, She'ena Nizrais Mazmechais. They don't grow through sowing, they grow of their own accord. Rav Yaina Mapik Nishna, he took out the din, he said, these mushrooms are part of a Maisim Nizra Ayes Per Latatan. They come out of the land, they don't nourish from the land, they're spat out of the land, as it were. Right? Rav Yonah holds you don't need a special pasuk to tell me these mushrooms are not included in Gedulah min haaretz. It's Svara because their main Yanika, their main sustenance comes from the air, therefore they're not considered Gedulah haaretz. Okay? Rishonim, the Rav Rishonim will hold these things are not Gedulah min haaretz. Okay? Tosfos holds, based on Abavli and Brachos Daf Mem, they are Gedulah min haaretz, but they don't get Yanika, they don't get nourishment from the land. Okay, let's carry on. Now, any food which was food at the beginning and food at the end, even though you guard it to increase in size, and you leave it in the ground so it should grow more, chayav katan v'gadol. You're chayav whether it's small or big. If you don't guard it, to improve its size, but you just want, let's say, to guard it, so to get hard, and use it for other purposes, not for eating purposes, then chayav, that's not chayav maestros at all. Not cotton, not gadol, not if it's small, not if it's big. Right? Ayachal gomor is when it's fitting for eating, even if you didn't say it for eating. You want it, you want to, but here, when you want to, let's see, you might want it to harden and use these seeds. This is again, you just want it to get hard. So would you not be chayav maestros, not small and not big, right? You just want it to get hard. You just use these seeds. He says here, it's a question, Lashon Tamia. Would you not be chayav? That's how some want to learn. Most people leave it for it to get hard. They use it for other purposes or for spices. It's still Eichel Gomor, although from the beginning you want it to get hard. All right, let's see. So Rav Yevish and Rav Shimon ben Lakish, He says, Zu, this one of this deal, because the Mishnah is Lahaisim Divrei Ram Gamliel. So Tanina and Tamar, we learn Ram Gamliel, Tamarais, which are these sort of berries, right? The beginning of the growth of the gival of these species, you get a sort of berry like a date of some kind. Some sort of berry, shall silton of the fenugreek, right? And shall chardal of mustard, shall put lavan, chayav maestros, chayav maestros. Now, even though these things are not so important for eating, I mean, sometimes people eat them. And you sow the fenugreek from the beginning for seeds. You don't really want to eat the whole thing. But the Tan of our Mishnah holds that since they're not choshev for eating, you're not chayav unless you sowed it in order to eat the berries. If you sowed it just to get hard, then there's no chiyuv maestros in such a case. And that's what the Mishnah means. It says if you guard it to increase in size as food, right? You're guarding it. When you don't guard it for food, then you're potter. But if it's a food, if it is a food, even if you guard it not to increase in size, you sow it to get hard, you're still chayav meiser. If you decided to gather it for food when it was soft. So you understand? So if it's a food, then you will be chayav meiser. Okay? Whereas these other things, it depends what your kavanah was. Now, so we're saying that what? The dirk of our Mishnah is coming to go against Ram Gamliel. To see again. So the dirk we said was to go against Ram Gamliel. Ram Gamliel said these berries are chayav maestros, though you really don't intend to eat them at all, but sometimes someone might eat them. So the Gemara argues on that Hesba Ravimi that we're coming to go against Ram Gamliel. Because these are fitting, tiny, slightly possible to be eaten. Ram Gamliel machayev. Ram Gamliel will machayev maestros, even if you just sow them for seed. Mayatu, that's the case. Afilu yarkad, even if the leaves, even the leaves should be there for chayav meiser when you sow the plants for seeds. Well, I mean, the leaves are also fitting slightly to be eaten. Ram Gamliel never obligated meiser on the leaves, right? He only said it on these berries. And he says, Ram Gamliel holds these berries chashuves hein la'echel. They are eligible as food in their own right. Right? Even without person thinking about eating them. And therefore you're chayav meiser even if you sow it for seed. Rabbanan Amri, the Rabbanan hold, ein chashuvas la'eichel. No, these berries are not really important to eat in their own right. A vegetable of these minim, okay, it's not chashuv food in its own right until you sow it in order to eat it. And other types of seeds as well, Rav Gamliel holds, although it's slightly edible, it's not chashuv food in its own right. Only if you sowed it with intention to eat it, but not if you sowed it for seeds. So the dirk of the Mishnah, anything you guard not to increase in size is potter from meiser, whether it's small or big. He says that's according to everyone. According to Gamliel, we're excluding these berries of other minim. According to Chachamim, we're excluding these berries of fenugreek and mustard, and not like Ravimi who wanted to say the Mishnah argued on Gamliel. But now Rav Yossi brings a right to what he said. Right, another proof that our Mishnah can even be like Rav Gamliel. Min Adon Tani, we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Yeshua, Miyamai leminani libi, laima leadam. I never said to someone, "Go and cut for yourself your berries of fenugreek, etc., and mustard, or shleik, and cook them lepatrim and maestros. Cook them, and you can eat them without taking meiser." Because he wasn't sure, maybe they had meiser like Rav Gamliel. And if he wasn't sure the halach was like him, and he's an individual, maybe the halach was not like him. Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't put a stam Mishnah like him if he's an individual. It must be the dirk of the Mishnah is agreed even according to Rabbi Gamliel, and he still obligates the berries with meiser when you sow it for seed, because he held they're considered a food in their own right, and he wasn't sure if they're considered a food, a choshev food like Rabbi Gamliel, or maybe it's not considered a eichel choshev like the Chachamim. And the Gemara brings a brisa which discusses this, the second side of the Mishnah. Tani kashuv tchilasa eichel. They ain't so eichel. If it was food at the beginning but not food at the end, it's chayav at the beginning and part at the end. Ma'izlach, what are you including with this? Kadad Tani, like we learned, hamekayim melea. You have a bed. It's like a flower bed. Yeah?
It's a castor plant for seeds.
Castor plant.
Shalach like castor oil, yeah.
A kachroya lezera, yeah, a castor plant. I thought sometimes we used to say echraya was boxwood. I don't know if that's the same thing as castor plant. I don't know. So hamekayim melea shalachraya lezera. You keep this sort of castor plant patch. You should get hard like wood. You use the seeds. Bad la data, you are insignificant compared to mankind. No one will do that. Right? Therefore, although your intention is for seed, but the name of food is still on this, the vegetables and the roots, and it's chayv ma'aser. But if you keep kalachin yachidim, like single stalks for sowing for seed, lo ba'al ladata, you are not insignificant. There are people that will keep sort of single stalks for this. So the vegetables and the roots are not considered oichel, part of a maser. Rav Yoda said, "V'hu." The din of the ratio of the brisa that this thing, if you keep it for zera, is chayv ma'aser. That's only sheniket yorok. You cut it when it was soft and fitting to eat. Our loyliket yorok, if you didn't cut it when it was soft as a vegetable, only after it became hard, then we don't say that because are we going to say eitzim chayavim b'maisrus that wood is chayv ma'aser? We can't say that. So it must be once it's become hard as wood. And it's definitely potter from masa. So basically, this achraya, you have a whole patch of it, and you're keeping it for zera. Your das is potter. It's like something which was food in the beginning and is not food at the end. If it's not food at the beginning but it's food at the end, you're not chayv until it becomes food. Ma'is, like what we included with this, like we learned elsewhere. When does fruit get an obligation in masa? Ta'inin, the figs, mishiyavchilu. When are they? When they it's a level of development which we will come to. Right? The Mishnah is counting many things from Perasa Ilan. When are they fitting to eat? And most Perasa Ilan are an example of something which is not eaten at the beginning; it's eaten at the end. Right? And you're not chayv ma'aser until it reaches that food stage later on.
So it's not even towel at that.
It's what?
It's not even towel.
No. Okay. Now, anything which is not fitting to eat until a certain level in its development, we said that then it's chayv, and the Onis Maestros will be chayv ma'aser when it reaches that stage. When is that stage with many of the different fruit trees? So when does that stage come? So this is when they become boichel. This is the beginning ripening session of the fig. Okay? V'anavim, and when it comes to the grapes, then Rabbeushin, which we'll see what they are in due course, they're types of bad grapes. Mishib Ishu, when they become Ba'usha, the beginning of the ripening of the process of the grapes. Ha'oig v'hatutim mishiadibu. Oig was always sumac, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Sumac and the sort of cherries, mulberries, mishiadibu, when they get a reddish tinge. Is used for tanning. It's got bunches of vines and they get eaten. And anything which is very red and it's ripening and green before it's ripe. When they reach that red stage, they start going red, that's the beginning of their ripening. I remind in the pomegranates, when the seeds sort of soften up in the hands of the person who's holding it. Hatamarim, the dates, they sort of open up with various cracks, just like chometz opens up with cracks when they start ripening. Hafasakin, the peaches, Mishiatilu Gidim, you find sort of red threads within them. The walnuts, Mishiasim Magura, when the seed separates from the shell, it's like stored in a storehouse. Rabbi Yehuda said, the nuts and the almonds, when they form a clipper, some sort of inner shell close to the pit. Charuvin, the carrots, Mishiyan Kidu, when they become sort of dotted, they look like you've got black dots on them. L'chol hashacharim, all fruit which is black, Mishiyan Kidu, when they have these dots. V'agasim, and the pears, v'akrus tamlin, the sort of small apples which are like gallnuts. V'aprishin v'chazaradin, which are sort of types of apples that grow in the forest. Mishiakrichu, when they reach a stage, shiakrichu, what they have sort of holes in them of some kind. Just 1 second. Shiakrichu. They open up, they're covered with hairs when they're small. They start growing, you have bald patches from the hairs that have fallen out. Okay, so it's when they become bald. That applies to all white things. Hatiltan, which is like Chelba, or fenugreek. Mishatitzmach hatzvor v'azeisim, mishatitzmach rather, when it all grows, and the grain and the olives, the tzvor v'azeisim, mishiach nisu shlish, when it grows a third. Okay? Bichelu, Rav Chia Bava Amar, he said, Chaysa, it like grew, the grain grew. Kamadatem, like we said in Basra, the Gam Nasham Bachalabi, the soul of the wicked kings was like heavy before Hashem, as it were. He couldn't take them. Something which you just haven't got patience for is considered heavy in your eyes. Right? It's Lashon is Gadel. Okay. Rav Abba Bayakov Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Mishyadimu Pihem. When the end of it goes a bit red. V'kala Ta'edim Pihem Adimos. And do you think all figs? There are figs where they never go red. So what are you going to do with that? They're not. Everything goes red. So what's his answer? Let's take one fig from the tree and leave it. In Bashla, if it ripened and became fitting to eat, but within 24 hours, Chayavos, you are chayav on the figs in the tree with Maaseh Lav, and if not, Petros de Apotel. Anavim Ravashin, which is when these grapes go a bit bad. It's called Beisha. Rav Aivu Ba'Nagri, Ratanchum Ba' Ilai, B'Shem Rav Nachum Ba'Simai, Busha Tehei Chatzana Shalahen Neres V'Machutz. That the level of ripening, in its process, some of the shells soften up around the grape. They become see-through because of all the juice within the grape, and then the pips appear to be outside. Rabbi Yochanan said, Rechiv Havina al Kisvei de Saba. I was riding on my grandfather's shoulders. The Shames Kale, and I heard the voice of Shimon Lazar Yosef Masne, who was teaching the following din. And he said, Machnisin b'mei melafafon. You're allowed to gather on Shabbos the pips of a melon of some kind which have fallen on the floor, so take them out of the house. Machnisin b'mei avatiach. You can't start gathering the melon seeds, from the floor. What's the difference between different types of seeds? The ones of the melon, are fitting to eat, so you can gather them. Whereas avatiach is lezriya, therefore sowing, so you can't gather it, because we know you can't gather it for eating. If you're going to tell me you're allowed to gather the seeds of the melon from the ground, you'll end up sweeping the floor on Shabbos. Okay, we'll stop here on my side.